Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of design, building, and remodeling.
I'm Todd Miller of Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. Today, my co-host is Ethan Young. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing good, Todd. How you doing?
I'm doing well also, and so good. We are just going to dive right into it today. I don't think we really had anything special to share, did we?
No, I think we're ready to get going. We're excited to have this guest, though.
Let's do it. Well, today's guest is actually a return guest, one of my favorite guests from season one, in fact. I do know the one thing I want to remind everyone, we are doing challenge words. So you might be on the lookout for any words we use that are unusual. And we've all been challenged to work a word or two into the conversation. And at the end, we will say whether we've been successful or not. So let's go on. Our spotlighted guest today is David Applebaum. Living and working in Los Angeles, David has been in his profession as an architect for 40 years at this point. Due to some of his famous clients over the years, David is known as Architect to the Stars. He has also hosted the America's Mansions program on National Geographic Television. David, it's great to have you back on the show today.
It is such a pleasure to be back and to see both of you, Todd and Ethan.
Well, thank you.
It's so funny. I was actually thinking a month ago, I wonder if they'll ever call me back because I had such a great time and it was serendipitous that you did.
Yeah. Well, we enjoyed the first one, so I'm glad we could get you back.
Good.
Absolutely. We took a little break there. our first season was like 120 episodes, and we decided to take a little about 3-month hiatus, and so we're back at it and pleased with that.
Do you have stock in throat lozenges now?
Yeah, I should. That's for sure.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm kind of curious. So last time you were on the show, we talked some about your early days in the profession and some of your thoughts on how to make design meet the needs of the client and create something truly special for them. But I don't know that we talked much about how you got to be interested in architecture at the first point. How did that happen?
Oh, like everything else in my life, it was a bit of a journey. I mean, I was one of those kids that loved building tree houses, and if there wasn't a tree, a fort. And I redecorated the house every now and then when I was a kid. I think that my first project that gave me great satisfaction was a prank I pulled, a prank that I pulled in high school, where I called in, so I think one of the time that I remember that I got great satisfaction out of something semi-architectural was a prank that I pulled in high school, in which I called in subcontractors for a carpet company and a painting company and a commercial furniture company to come into the library. Because it was really bland, and it wasn't so much that I was actually going to get the work done. I just wanted somebody to pay attention to the carpet kind of smelled. And so I created a committee, and we actually made a presentation. The assistant principal in charge of my grade was shocked and livid when all these people were coming in to bid carpeting and furniture and things like that. And I acted like I really knew what I was doing. And in the end, they actually did make some changes in the library. And I remember that gave me a lot of satisfaction. But to be honest, I didn't really think at that time about becoming an architect. I just had a lot of curiosity and thoughts about what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And I walked around with a little 3x5 spiral notebook in my back pocket. And when I met an adult, especially someone I knew and trusted, I would say, so what is it that you do again? And what background and training and schooling did you need? And what do you like and not like about the profession? And I realized I'm old enough that there was no such thing as ADD back then. You were just, disruptive in class. But I knew I didn't like to read, so I wasn't going to become a lawyer and I wasn't going to become a doctor. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I took an aptitude test in 10th grade, at the end of 10th grade. And the guy said, you've got a very unusual score because you're very high in math. You're very high in creativity. You're very high in people skills. What's a profession that lets you be, an artist and a professional and work with people? And he said, if there was such a thing as a vice president in charge of creativity, which there is now, but there wasn't then, that would be a great job. And we started brainstorming, and architect was a job that was 9 to 5 and creative and dealt with people. And it just seemed like a good idea. And I just kind of stuck with it.
Very cool. So you're one of those rare situations where the guidance counselor actually suggested something helpful and you landed there. That's good.
I hope that wasn't too loud, but yeah. Not a bunch of pamphlets, just hey. And so I had to go back to my junior high school to take the test in one of those temporary buildings. And it was like it's a long battery of tests. It was like having to take an SAT that you don't really need, but it was probably more valuable than the SAT that I actually took.
Interesting. So I remember when my son was going through that a few years ago, he did one of those aptitude tests at school, and it came back and told him he should be a bus driver. Now, nothing against bus drivers. Ethan knows my son, though, and I think you'll agree, that probably wasn't a good choice for him.
No, Evan's skills are definitely elsewhere. He definitely has some great skills, but I don't think bus drivers is calling.
He doesn't even like to drive across town. Okay, well, so over your years, and I saw you kind of scoff when I mentioned it's been 40 years, and you and I are the same age, so we've been at this the same time. But
doesn't it sometimes feel like you just started?
Oh, absolutely.
I would also say COVID did a little bit to kind of reinvigorate, because I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, work is very much like the carousel, the merry-go-round, it's always moving and you got to jump on. And once you're on, you're on. But we had a little bit of a economic hiccup before COVID, and it kind of knocks everybody off the carousel. And then with COVID, I remember thinking once COVID was starting to open up, and there's some other things that I'm sure we'll get into later on, but I kind of felt like I was in my late 20s again, starting all over again with small jobs, not big jobs, because that was really all that was available. And it's been very interesting to kind of come back with that, what, this is why I do it. And I now am at a point where I want to take the job because I like the clients or I like the challenge, and not because I need the work. Frank Lloyd Wright once was told in an interview, well, of course you do great work. You've got rich clients. And Frank Lloyd Wright said, if my client wants something really special and unique and of my point of view, I would do a chicken coop. I don't care about the budget. I care about the project. I don't know if that was really true. It's true for me.
Yeah. Well, over your career, I'm curious, what are some of the changes you've seen and how do you feel about them?
Well, that's funny. That was a great transition into what it was that I was referring to before. My biggest problem is corporate flippers, or I should say my biggest distaste for the profession right now is corporate flippers. It used to be one thing that planned communities had houses that all looked the same. But right now in Los Angeles, the nicest neighborhoods look like planned communities.
Interesting.
They are these oversized McMansions that, well, when I became divorced and I had to look for a home, I was looking for a home that I could renovate and work on. And I was always being outbid for cash with a price that was much higher than it should be by all these corporate flippers. 20 years ago, normally what happened is I would get a phone call with somebody saying, you were recommended as an architect. My family would like to move to X neighborhood, and we've started looking at properties, and we have 4 that we kind of like, and we would like your guidance as to whether we should renovate, tear down, what the timing would be, but we like the neighborhood, we like the school district. And so you would go and you would meet with them and you give them the pros and the cons. They'd pick one, and a year or two later, they would move into a custom home. Those projects do not exist anymore. The corporate flippers have come in and bought them often, and I don't want to get into this, but before it hits the market. And then the other thing that I don't like, and I'll get back to it, is the permitting process. But they will say, hey, you have done this one. You've approved it 74 times. It's the exact same thing. Let's make it 75. And they get a permit like that because it's all building and safety is just looking to, they don't care about aesthetics. They care about the public welfare and safety. And so they get a permit. But then a lot of these guys do things illegal. Like they said the house was 56 feet wide, and that with the 10 foot and 10 foot side yards, it's a 76-foot property line to property line. In reality, the house isn't 56 feet wide, it's 60 feet wide. And what ends up, or as a certain person who has 2 supermodels as daughters and got a permit for a 24,000 square foot house in Bel Air and was building a 60,000 square foot house,
a little bit different,
in Bel Air, and big dirt trucks were coming in and out in Bel Air, the most expensive neighborhood in Los Angeles with the most rich clients in Los Angeles. They put a stink to it. Did they stop the project? No. They slapped his wrist with $1 million fine, which, considering that he sold the property for $100 million, big whoop. Okay. But they changed the building code. And now we are limited to how much dirt we can go. Instead of following the rules or enforcing the rules, they then make the rules more draconian, which then goes back to my problem with the flippers, because they find a slimy way. Let's change that. Let's recalibrate my words too. They find a slick way to get something in and permitted, and they get a permit within a month. I had a project that took 2 years to get a permit because it's on an irregular street. It's on a substandard street. It's in the hillside. And so what used to be a 1 to 2 year building process is now a 2 to 4 year building process for me on the few properties that are available for work. So to me, the biggest problem is departments of building and safety don't have the guts or the teeth to enforce intelligent building codes and make everything worse for us. I'm doing a project in Texas. I think I mentioned this last time, but doing a project in Texas. The building code in Houston, Texas is 20 pages long. In Los Angeles, California, it's 20 volumes long.
Yeah.
And some of those volumes have 7 or 8 binders. I don't even know how to get a building permit anymore that doesn't take a lot of time. And often my clients have to hire an expediter, and I have a couple of expert expediters, but guess what? They cost almost as much as me So it's very, at one point you're probably going to say, so what do you have to say to young future potential architects? It's tough, man. It's tough. I could probably, I could probably monetize my business by doing what these other people are doing and just doing the same old block thing over and over and over again and repeating it, or doing I have a lot of contractors that will say, David, you're our favorite architect, not because of your design, but because you answer the phone when something goes wrong. If I'm doing a set of drawings for a house, it's at least 20 sheets large. You make mistakes. There are things that don't work. So I'm there. What most architects do is they do a drawing where the plans don't meet the elevations, don't match the sections, but they do it quick, they get it over with, and then they don't answer the phone to take care of the problems. And so if you're old school like me and you care about every aspect of it, you're kind of a dinosaur. And so if you're willing, I realized in architecture school, so in architecture school, we learn the history of architecture, and it takes 2 semesters to get through it. And the book is about yay thick. The portion of famous architects from even 100 years ago is that much. And I realized I don't want to be famous. I just want to work. I just want to make my clients happy. I just want to give them their kind of project. And I want to do it well, and I want to be proud of what I do. That's all I want. I just want to stay busy. I kind of think the secret to life is find something you like to do and stay busy with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be happy. And making clients happy makes me happy. So I realized then I am not going to take the path to fame. So glad I didn't. And I just want to do good work. So I know this is a very convoluted answer, and I apologize, but the trends have made it that it's harder to be an architect, but I will bet that the trends have made it so that it's harder to be anything right now. Can you imagine being a doctor and all that
agree.
Paperwork and insurance stuff? And I mean, I think it's just tough. So my message to any prospective anything is find something that you really like.
Yeah, because you're going to have that passion and desire to see you through all the difficulties of doing it.
And pick a trade. I would say actually pick a trade, because when you talk about trends, I think one of the weirdest things, it's hard to find contractors because they're having a hard time finding subcontractors.
Absolutely.
You know, there are no young plumbers. There are no young electricians. There are no young plasterers. I feel like I'm, what's his name? Mike Rowe. If you really want to do something with your life, I swear, become a plumber, man. There's an unlimited air conditioning, electrical work. There's an unlimited amount of work out there for you.
No, absolutely. There sure is.
I'm doing work at my own place. There's paint all over my fingers because I couldn't get a painter. I could get a painter in 3 months, but I couldn't get one now. And so there's some things I won't do. I won't do electrical. Will not. I've shocked myself enough times. The second time was like, okay, from now on, I don't care what it is, I'm calling an electrician. I occasionally will do some plumbing, but very minor. Fine cabinetry, no. But a lot of other things I can do.
Yeah.
And I want to do it. I think that's another interesting thing about me. I don't know if everybody else does it. Actually, in my architecture school days, I spent my summers and the year off between undergraduate and graduate working. That was so quick. I need to recalibrate my pace. I spent all of my summers and the year in between undergraduate and graduate school of architecture school working construction, because you got to know how it works and why. And I personally, I've been told that besides answering the phone, I'm always going to the job sites and I talk to everyone. And I want to know, is there a new way of flashing the windows? Is there a different way of doing anything? Should I have chosen a metal roof instead of, choosing a slate roof? And things change. In California, we have so many energy concerns that everything is transitioning to all electrical, no gas allowed in Los Angeles anymore. And our HVAC, our air conditioning and heating, is now ductless. We now have these split ductless setups that are ugly as sin, but they're efficient.
I have to think that that's great that you spent that time in college working on construction sites, because I have to imagine that there are some architects out there who are intimidated by the thought of being on a job site, just because of lack of familiarity with that hands-on aspect.
We live in a world where no one wants to admit that they're wrong.
Yes.
I think that's a part of being old school also is nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. And I think that's how you fail.
I think even that people sometimes don't want to admit that they don't know, that's maybe they view it as a weakness or a vulnerability, but just being able to admit that I don't know the answer to this. I don't know, that could go a long way.
I don't know if you're right about that, Ethan. I don't know.
Well, you've referred to yourself a couple times as an old school architect, and I like the sound of that. Tell us a little bit more what that means to you, or are there any particular technologies you're seeing today that you are really rebelling against?
Or enjoying. I mean, I guess oh, wow. It's so funny. I think there are a lot of musicians that are old school, but they're young. Most of my old school is just, when you say old school architect, all I can think of is, oh my gosh, I can't stand up from my chair. My knees hurt. Just kidding. So I will first, let's be positive first.
There you go.
There are some things that have occurred that I love. I actually love all this Zoom technology and FaceTiming or Google View or whatever it's called with the Android products. I've got this project in Texas and I don't have to be physically on the job site all the time. I've got clients meeting with a group of contractors and they had a family emergency and they're in Montana. Well, instead of waiting 2 weeks, we're going to do it all virtually. And, in California, gasoline is $5 a gallon. And my projects are an hour's drive away sometimes. So I save 2 hours and expense sometimes by doing things virtually. So I like that. I would like to now add that I might have to stop because the garbage truck just showed up. And when it backs out of my street, you might hear a lot of beeping. So I thought about getting one of those for myself, by the way. So that, oh, well, I'm the clumsiest guy in the world. I trip over everything. I back into everything. Yeah. There's a reason why I don't do electrical work.
Well, I don't either.
So I like that part of technology a lot. However, there's an Italian style of drawing. Oh, I can't remember the name. It's got char in it, but it's all about the shadows in the drawing.
Is it chiaroscuro or something like that?
Oh, you are. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what it is. That should be the secret word. But I could have never come up with it because I forgot what it was. And it's funny. It's something that I do in my life a lot. I don't necessarily remember the word, but I know the intention. And the whole idea of having it be about the shadows. And I love modern art. And I love modern architecture, and I love crisp lines, and I love simplicity. But if you look at a Le Corbusier building, it's not as sharp and machined as you might imagine. It's got a lot of hand-laid brick. And if you look at a Rothko painting, it's very simple, but the edges all bleed. I just went off topic. So let me recalibrate and go back to where I need to be, which is there's something about intention, hand building, focus, personal perspective that I feel is starting to be missed in this kind of launching off of when I said I don't like how a lot of architects, in order to try and become profitable, they do this much of the work and just hope somebody figures it out for them. I can't work that way. And so, we have now these computer rendered 3D drawings, which I don't like, because if you look at an MC Escher drawing, it looks three-dimensional, but it's not. You can see how you can lie in those. Mm-hmm. And there's also this now 3D model building, and where you get I guess it has an epoxy or a glue or something, and it just builds it. But I build models, and the models that I build are out of a very thin cardboard, because I design using those three-dimensional tools. Architecture is not flat. It's not a painting. It's not a drawing. It's not two-dimensional. It's three-dimensional. And so I use models because I find that so funny how it's like, oh yeah, what about, I think a lot of architects design what I call postcards. It's a beautiful flat image of the front, but then you go to the side or you walk up to it and the perspective changes. I mean, this is a model that I built of a project that I'm doing in Houston, Texas. And it's one of those, so this is it from the street. And the thing is, it's got a yard and you can walk around it. And you can hopefully see in this how what started here is coming down and then coming back up and then around and then becomes a part of everything. And so this is a side that you don't really see. Sorry, it's a little boring, but this is the backyard and this is the side yard, which is spacious. Wow. And this is the front. And the thing is, if I just design this actually is pretty boring in my opinion. But as soon as you're here walking into the house, it stops becoming boring and it becomes really interesting. And when you're in the back, again, it's very interesting.
It's like an MC Escher drawing there on the back.
Well, funny. So I mean, I was hoping I could find, because you're the roof master there. When I did Cuba Gooding Jr.'s house, I learned this a long time ago. When you get the roof right, everything else works. And he had a huge property. And you were even the way I even set it up was the way you drove and the way you walked in. There was a curving, meandering path that took you through it. And I had most lazy architects, designers, design, if it's a two-story house, a two-story entry. Ooh, that's big, it's massive, but there's no scale. So I had a 1.5-story portico at the front that allowed you to feel like you were at human scale, but that roof, as it went up and then came back on the gable side of it, then became a 1-story veranda, the roof of the veranda that wrapped around 2/3 of the house. And so it meshed together. I couldn't have gotten that without building a model, especially because in order to get that roof to work, my plate lines were always different. most houses are what I call a wedding cake. First floor, second floor, a single gutter line, and then a roof like a Pizza Hut on top. And I think that's boring. And so I would break it up anyway. But in this particular house, the master bathroom toilet room had a ceiling that started at 7'10", but pitched up because I couldn't get the roof to work in all 3 dimensions without that. So, in most cases, the plate line, bedrooms and stuff were all pretty similar. But then as the roof was being allowed to play, and if you are doing a 3D model, you have to know exactly what it looks like or you can't build it. And I want to be surprised. I want to be delighted with what I discover. Everything with me is kind of a journey. So
yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense though. The 3D model kind of lets you block everything out and see, exactly how you want to do it and be flexible with, I don't like this, let me change this,
I buy more thin poster board than a 3rd grade craft teacher. And, it's so funny. When I was, one of the jobs that I had before I went on my own, I was remodeling for Frank Israel, a project that Frank Gehry had originally designed. And there was an expansion to it. And I didn't understand the drawings. And I asked my boss, I said, on my own time, I'll build a model of this existing because I don't think we can build the addition. I mean, Frank Gehry's work is very 3-dimensional. And I actually thought it was kind of ugly until I started building the model. And then I was like, oh, I get this. Oh, that's why. And so he wanted the opportunity to have first right of refusal on the direction that we were going. And he walked in and the first thing he said was, oh, you built a model, to my boss, Frank. Well, that was smart. I think that was a really good move. And Frank said, no, it was David's idea to build a model. And he looked at me and he said, we designed this thing in model. We didn't do one drawing for a while. We just took pieces of corrugated cardboard and cut it with scissors and ripped it and used Scotch tape and glue. But that's how we came up with this design, which is why you can't understand it from a drawing.
Have there ever been any times that you even discovered as you were trying to build the model that I can't make this do what I want it to do?
Every time.
Really? Wow.
Every time. The house that I'm doing in Houston, I remember I was with some of my friends and one of them had brought their kid along and asked what I did, what I was doing in town. I'm an architect. And I said, oh, look. And I pulled a picture from my phone. This is what the house is going to look like. And he said, oh my God, that's gorgeous. How'd you come up with that? And I said, I must have drawn it 580 times, frustratingly upset that it wasn't working. And that was building a model, sketching, building a model, putting it on the computer, sketching it again. I said, so I must have done it. Now I forgot what number I did, but so 580 times it was just frustratingly awful. And then 581, it clicked. And once it starts clicking, it's kind of like a friend. You can talk to somebody and know in 5 minutes, no. And then go from party to, the party from person to person. All of a sudden there's somebody, it's like you've known each other forever. Whatever you're talking about all fits. It just works. So there's been one project that I walked in and said, oh, I know what we're going to do. And from that moment, it grew from there, but just one. And that was a remodeling in addition to a really wonderful California architect who had done it like 80 years before. And it was just so clear what to do.
Well, why don't we dig into some stories? You weave stories into everything, and that's one of the things I love about you, David. But last time we met, you told some great stories about Frank Sinatra as a client, but any other memorable stories from past clients, maybe famous or not famous, whatever?
Well, one of my now happy memories, I was doing a house in Bel Air, and, I'm going to say I have done 8 projects for this guy, including the first one. but he is one tough SOB. Tough. Kind of mean. His wife calls him a scoundrel. So I will actually give you this completely unedited because you won't know who it is. So it's okay. And he's not famous, but people become successful by being a bit ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing a house in Bel Air, one of the most expensive areas where the soil is terrible and it's all these hills. And we were doing an addition and a second floor and all these kinds of things. And it was a 1-story house. And as a 2-story house, I've already told you I like Journey, not the band. No, I do like the band, but I'm not talking about the band. I'm talking about, I just think life is a journey, and so should the appreciation of where you are. As a quick aside, people don't understand it, but the elements of architecture all have meaning. For instance, columns are there to give you a sense of rhythm and repetition. So that way, as you're walking, depending on how they're spaced, you could, or steps are there to make you stop and pay attention to where you are and where you're going. To me, a doorknob is a handshake that welcomes you into the next room. I like to think of all of the architecture like that. So with that in mind, where we were expanding, we were right at the precipice of a downhill drop. So I, for sure, was not going to build a 30-foot 2-story wall where you had 6 to 8 feet to walk and that's it. So I had the first floor where you thought it should be. Then I had a balcony with columns that was the terrace to the second floor, which then the second floor stepped back from that first floor so that you had columns, wall stepped back.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that the staircase was in the middle of the house. And because the staircase was at the edge of the wall of the second floor, but that put it in the middle of the first floor. And I'm showing them the design. And the wife says, "Oh, I think you have the staircase in the wrong place. We don't want it in the middle of the house, taking over everything. You have to put it on the exterior wall." And I said, "No, you can't." And I explained, I said, you're going to have 6 to 8 feet to walk, and you don't want a 30-foot wall, which is what will happen if you put the staircase up against that wall. You want it to step back. And no. And they fought me. And I said, I refuse. I was so young. I can't believe I'm a pleaser of my clients. Whatever you want, it's your house, it's your money. I will do my best with it. And I said, it's your house, it's your money. I will do my best with it, but I will not put your staircase on this wall. I'm putting it here. You have to trust me. And if you want it on the exterior wall, you need to find another architect. I said, I'll make this offer for you. I will build a model of this house and show you why. I said, okay. And they said, I don't get it. When I gave them the model, they said, I don't get it, but okay, we're already this far along. We don't want to find another architect. Fast forward to 8 months later, the house is now framed and the staircase is in. Mm-hmm. And the wife comes out and says, "Thank you for putting your foot down. I get it. My idea would have been so stupid. It would have been a block. It would have been ugly. So thank you." Now, the continuation of that story, I could stop it there, happy ending. The continuation is the client, male, turns to me and says, "Don't listen to her. I'm the boss of this house. Don't listen to her. You're a terrible architect. Get off my property, you're fired." Now,
wow.
I knew him well enough to know that that was his way of saying he believes that if he's nice to you, like she was just nice to me, you're going to start taking advantage. Because he's, when you have that much money, everybody's trying to weasel in. I drive off, and the contractor called me and said, oh my God, are you okay? I said, I didn't get fired. If he would have fired me, he would have let me go home and fired me over the phone. He made a big thing out of that. And he called me that night and said, so what are we going to do about this room and that room? It was, I mean, I was just really lucky that I had the confidence with him, because he was maybe the toughest human being I've ever had to deal with as a client. But like I said, I've done like a dozen things. Done like 10 or 11 things for him since, some very small and some not so. I mean, his prized book collection, there was a leak from upstairs and it destroyed a bunch of his books. And so we redid his library, and he like called me and said, David, I need you badly. Please come. And so, step by step now, and then, there's some personal things that happened after that, but I consider him I wouldn't call him a friend, but I would call him a familiar and close relationship.
Yeah. Good deal.
Then, of course, if you live in Los Angeles, you go to the AMC movie theater and the movie's over and you're in the restroom, and all of a sudden next to you look over, it's like, oh my God, it's Mel Brooks. Which I think I must have said out loud. And he said, well, whatever you do, don't turn around and say hello until you're done. And so we basically spoke in Yiddish accents for about 5 minutes, and it was hilarious. It's very difficult to use the restroom when you're laughing, but it's just a wonder. It's a treat. And then, I mean, I was going to, this is actually a really good one. One of my first projects that I ever did at a graduate school was for Virgin Records. They were going to open up an American division of their record company. And I'm friends with the guy who was going to be the co-CEO of this record label. And they were renting a house with a very small crew to get started and start picking their artists and all that. And they found a space, and he said, why don't you come by and look at it and talk to me and my partner about how to make this thing work? And because we're going to interview all the famous architects. We're going to interview Frank Gehry and Morphosis and Errico and Moss, and we just want to do a run through. So I went through a run through, told this is what I would do. I think this is what you got. And a month later, he called me up and said, my partner only liked you. Do you want to be our architect? I was like, yes. And so I did this project, and then I designed the vice president's house. I started working with all of these people in the record industry. And at the time that I was doing this, at the beginning, there's a documentary on Netflix now called The Greatest Night in Pop, about the We Are the World song, with all of the pop stars at the time. And I remember the rumor of it going around and go, oh, yeah. That sounds, I said, oh, I wish I could be there. No, you can't. Nobody even knows where it's going to be. And it's like, well, it's going to be at A&M Recording Studios. Nobody's supposed to know that.
How'd you know that?
Who told you? It's like, it's the largest recording studio in all of Los Angeles. You can't get that many people. It's got a lot of parking behind gates. It just makes sense. Okay. So fast forward to, but I worked a lot of record people. Then one of them became Quincy Jones's record company president. And I designed Quincy Jones's record company headquarters and their television company's headquarters as well. Lots of stories with that, but the best one with it was Quincy Jones. He really didn't care about anything except for, he said, I only have one requirement. You have to have a piano. I sign a 1-year contract with Ray Charles every year. He's the guy who got me started. He gave me my first big break. I love him like a brother. I will always sign him. We sign a 1-year contract. He comes to the office. He signs it in person, and then he plays. And I said, well, I'm not working on this project anymore unless you promise that when he comes to sign a contract, I'm invited for a site visit. And so one of the greatest moments of my life was basically being 10 feet from Ray Charles, laughing with Q and playing all of his hits.
Awesome.
I don't even know. Serendipitous isn't even a strong enough word for how happy and lucky I was to be there. Oh my God. It's tough to go to a concert after you have a one-on-one that intimate and close, but it wasn't one-on-one. There were like 60 or 70 of us there, but it was amazing.
So I'm curious, at this point in your career, it seems to me you can be a little bit selective as far as the type of projects you work on and so forth. But let me ask a couple questions. One is, what type of project do you most enjoy working on? And my follow-up question on that, if someone asks you to design a self-storage facility, is there anything that they could do that would make that excite you?
Oh, hell yes. There's a city, Columbus, Indiana, where the Cummins diesel engines were designed and still are designed and built. And the people that owned that building were big fans of architecture. So they have warehouses and factories that are designed by Eero Saarinen and Louis Kahn and just the great minds. And Louis Kahn, actually, I just remembered, did one of my favorite things he ever did were beach bathroom pavilions, just little 12 by 12 bathrooms at the beach. Stunning. I would be happy to do a public storage facility as long as you didn't want what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
If
Gotcha.
you just want, that simple box, then find somebody else, because it's not going to work for me. But if you want to figure out a way to make public storage a little more fun, yeah, count me in. Robert Venturi, the great architect, said there's two kinds of buildings. There's the Long Island duct and the decorated shed. And the Long Island duct is one of the dock, not a duct. We're not doing HVAC. The Long Island duct is where you have a building that looks like what it is that you do. Like there's a place in LA called the Tail of the Pup, which is a big hot dog that opens up and you serve hot dogs from there. And they also serve hamburgers. So if you want to get a hamburger out of a hot dog, that's the joke.
That's the place.
And then the decorated shed is really what we're all doing. And Robert Venturi actually went as far as to make all of his buildings for a while a boxed shed. Like he actually had a design for the, the NFL Hall of Fame. And it was just a box, but it had a huge, and this was before they were as good as they are now, but an absolutely huge televised screen in front that would always be showing great plays and interviews with the players as you're walking in. Because once you're inside, now you choreograph the experience. So yeah, I would be happy to do that. This actually comes back to the conversation that we had before, because I do like doing homes. And it's so funny. On one hand, you said, would I do public storage? Yes. A dream would be something I would love to do a chapel or a contemplative. Yes. Are you sure? A thoughtful space.
There you go.
That's part inside and part outside, like a chance to do something like the Wayfarer's Chapel or Ronchamp by Le Corbusier. I would love everything with me is a journey. So if I could make it in some way that every step you take changes your experience, builds upon the experience, that would be serendipitous. I hope I get that. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but man, everybody listening to this, put your positive thoughts out. David wants to do a poetry garden. So those are the ends of the spectrum. I do prefer doing residential over commercial. I do commercial. I did a record company, several record companies, because these are people that are interested in beautiful, special design. I did a restaurant in Hong Kong, and I really, oh my God, we designed everything from choosing the plates and the forks and the napkins to the building. I was actually offered a job at one point to be the design director for Starbucks. And I was absolutely excited about it but if I was going to do it my way, or if I was going to have some strong input. It's so funny. When I was there and interviewing, Howard Schultz, the chairman, was looking at ideas for, this is how long ago it was, drive-throughs. They were now deciding they wanted to do drive-throughs. It was that long ago. And I'm standing there kind of off to the side, and I'm looking at all these designs, and Howard looks at me and he says, I like all of them. I don't love any of them. And then he looks over at me and says, okay, you're interviewing to do some design work around here. Give me something to go on. I said, the problem is you have created a coffee experience. Starbucks is not about the coffee as much as it is about the experience. It's something that tastes delicious. You wait in line, you smell it, you make your order. You have this path that's choreographed with tea bags and mugs and CDs. Remember CDs?
Oh, yeah.
And it's all part of an experience. I said, all you're looking at is a McDonald's or a KFC or a Pizza Hut that just has the awnings and green trappings of Starbucks. You haven't created the experience. And I said, here's what I would do. And I came up with this idea where you would have a sculpture on the outside of, so the building doesn't have to, again, decorated shed. The building doesn't have to be anything. You could make it a Long Island duck and make it look like a mug. Okay. Or it could just be a box. It doesn't matter. But now let's put a ring of columns around it. And if you want to, have them sculptural so they look like wafts of steam. But now, remember I told you a column gives you rhythm. It also can give you a sense of enclosure without claustrophobically locking you in. I said, let's put these columns around, but far enough away that they're at a, when you drive up, you're maybe doing 8 miles an hour. So you have them farther apart. But as you're stuck a little bit closer, so that you feel it. But now you're in between perforated skin and waiting for your coffee. And you're in line, you're cued in a choreographed way, the same way that you are when you're inside waiting for the coffee. And it was with us, like, oh, that was really good. And then I won't get into the politics that made me say no. But see, that kind of, it's so funny. That goes back to your public storage, because I'd be happy to do a drive-through. It just has to have some essence to it that has personality and meaning and purpose and design. So when I have a certain, so I will do commercial if they'll let me go in that direction. Usually in residential, that is a given. Like somebody loves to cook. I'm doing a house right now in West Hills, and the wife she makes fudge, she makes gumbo, she makes bread, she makes everything. So the kitchen is really important. And the fun that I'm having with her in creating a kitchen that she will adore and enjoy and make her life easier, that's why I do mostly residential, and those are the kinds of clients and projects that I look for.
Enjoy. Good stuff. You're talking about Starbucks, and it's made me think of something I was thinking about a couple days ago. When Starbucks first started spreading across the country, I mean, I would be traveling and I would seek out the Starbucks. I found it to be a very special experience. And I don't get that anymore. I don't know if it's because the experience isn't there or because I now expect more. But I love what you're talking about as far as designing spaces that transport you someplace else. And I was thinking a little bit, you mentioned chapels. I thought a little bit about, I think it's Church of the Holy Cross outside of Sedona, up in the Red Rocks. I think it was maybe designed by a Frank Lloyd Wright student or something.
Yes. Yes.
But that's just such an experience to visit that. And just amazing what you can do with design.
If any kind of project like that, like a part of a college campus, I think that what's happened with Starbucks is part of what I said with Starbucks people was, you've got more Starbucks than there are. I mean, you go in a city, there's Starbucks within 5 minutes of one from the other from the other. How are you going to sustain that? And how are you going to continue to make it comfortable and have personality? And I had some ideas. I wanted to do a kit of parts where everything did match. But part of the problem I had with Starbucks, and I didn't really get it until I was in Seattle interviewing, because it was misting and gray. The furniture at Starbucks was all crushed velour, like really stuff that made you feel warm. And in Seattle, that makes perfect sense, but that does not work in Miami.
Yeah.
In Miami, you need to be using things like Naugahyde and, something that you can get suntan oil on, or something that isn't, it doesn't make you feel warm, makes you feel cool. And so I wanted to kind of have a kit of parts so that if you go from one Starbucks to the other, there is similarity. There is the same graphics. There's the same color scheme, but Texas can have corrugated metal because they're big in that, and Florida can have something that has more like the weaved grass kind of look. And then in Chicago, you can have leather or fake leather, and then, and crushed velour and things like that. But it's different in all of them, and you can actually get a new experience with every store that you go to, yet always feel comfortable. I think that, as I said, most jobs are getting more challenging. I think when you have a behemoth like the way Starbucks is now, with ice creams and so many products, I think you end up forgetting where you came from. I even remember reading 6 months ago that Howard Schultz, who's now retired and the emeritus CEO, said, hey, we have to remember where we came from and get back to our roots. And you know what? I always, from that first conversation I had with him, which was short, but I really admire that guy. And he's not there anymore. And I think that's another reason why you don't feel the same, because it's missing his personality and it's more corporate.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Starbucks will never let me into another one of their stores again for saying that.
So switching gears a tiny bit, someone just walked into a building that you designed. What are some adjectives that you'd like to imagine them using to describe the building or the experience?
Well, first of all, I would love for them to not even know I had anything to do with it. I mean, I know that's going to sound really weird, but I told you I'm not interested in being famous. When I do a house, like the house I just described with the woman who's got the wife, Diane. I mean, let's make it true. Diane loves to cook. Okay. And then I'm doing another house where these people are the most fun, creative people I know. And it's all about pizzazz and energy. And I want people to walk into the house. What I want to hear them say is, hey, fill in the blank of whatever name it might be. This is so you. This is you. I see you all over this house. I don't want my fingerprints on it. I want theirs. However, I would love for them to say, wow, I would love for them to say, I feel so comfortable. I've gotten so many compliments from my clients. My favorite one was when Cuba Gooding Jr. called me and said, my sister just came over for Christmas, and after opening the presents, she just curled up and fell asleep on the floor in the living room. And I know that that sounds silly, but you've created a comfortable home where people can be themselves. And that is what I wanted. And I didn't even tell you. And you gave it to me. And my family is growing up here. And I feel the love all the day, every day. That's what I want. I want people to be comfortable. I want people to feel safe. I want them to feel inspired. And I want them to feel like they saw something really beautiful. Or I shouldn't say, I hate it. I'm so upset with myself. Not that they saw something beautiful, that they experienced
something.
A beautiful space and a beautiful view and a beautiful experience.
Wow. That's good stuff. And I have no doubt you're doing that for your clients just because of your process and the way that you care for them.
I'm not easy. You know, there's a lot of clients that don't want that. They just want, give me I get so many clients, potential clients that call me. Oh my gosh. One of the things I hate is how much junk email I get. And I'm getting at least 20 or 30 emails a day from, we want to, what is it? They not budget, but, they're going to break down all the costs. They're going to be able to give me breakdowns on the costs for all of my it starts with an E. What are my estimators? We're project estimators. And it's like, I'm an architect. That's not part of my purview, but oh my God. But I get a lot of junk email. That's one of them. And a lot of them are for websites. We can give you more traffic on your website. I don't want traffic on my website because the traffic on my website will be, how much do you charge? We live in an Amazon world where everybody's looking for a deal. And sometimes a deal is not what you want. How many times do you buy that $1,000 sofa? Let me take that back. That $500, $600 sofa that 3 years from purchase is stained, is ripped. The fabric is stretching in a weird way. It smells funny. If you want cheap, if you want quick, if you want what everybody else has, there are lots of other people, but that's not me. And I'm not easy. And I actually have a contractor who built some cabinets that I have to say to him, you can't do that on the next project or I will never work with you again, ever, ever, ever. We had to fix a lot of this. It's not happening. It can't.
Well, you touched on it earlier, but I will ask you this question. Any advice for younger folks interested in architecture as a career?
I'd be interested in having a conversation with younger people about pretty much everything when it comes to life. I think it's important to do what you love and love what you do. My business has a David Applebaum architect. Its byline is live where you love where you live. And I think that's important in everything in life. And I think life is tough. So you got to pick something that you love so much that it doesn't matter if you don't make money. Architecture is also the kind of field in which if you work for one of the big corporate offices, there might be 600 people working there. There's only 5 people designing. So what about the other hundreds of people? You have to feel really good that you're contributing to something that you believe in. I really don't know what to say because I remember when I went into architecture, a lot of architects said, run, don't get into this field. It doesn't make any money. It's a lot of hours. It's very thankless, and it's probably worse now. I mean, I'd always thought if I was really good, I didn't have to worry about those things, but you do have to worry about those things. It's wow. I don't know how to answer this one, because if it's something you really want to do, it's interesting, because when COVID and just before that, the big economic hit, recession that we had came about, I'm still in touch with a lot of my architecture school professors and administrators, and the top 20% of the students, the most creative, the hardest working, none of them went into architecture for about 8 years. They all went into animation because they were, because so many of the things that we do with the computer renderings and such, all of the Disneys and Pixars and 20th Century Foxes were paying 3 times as much to become a digital animator and storyteller. And in a lot of ways, it's very similar. You're building a story, you're building understanding, and whether it's a movie or whether it's a building, in my opinion, they're very similar. And a lot of the best talent went there. I can't blame them. And if I would have graduated then, I probably would have been tempted to go in that direction as well. I think it's important to be flexible. I think it's important to it's important to understand that it's okay to make a mistake. Hopefully, life is long, and we will all have chances to correct any missteps that we have. I don't dislike what I do. I have a girlfriend now that's always telling me how she loves having she loves hearing about what it is that I do, because she just thinks that the talent that goes into it is just, I kind of forgot about, I'm not trying to pump myself up, but I forgot what it is that I really do, which is creating for people. And so when she'll ask me questions about what I'm doing and remind me how I'm taking care of people and how I have a trick to do this or whatever. Did you notice you have a view? Look at this tree. We need to put the window here. And she'll just smile at me and tell me how great I'm doing. And it's not that. It's that it reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing and how that's where I need to find my joy. It's not my bank account and it's not my roster of clients. It's doing something that hopefully makes the world a better place in a very solid and substantial way. Because where you live, where you work, where you worship, where you enjoy yourself, they all need places. And instead of just being a box and thinking that storage lockers need to always be like egg cartons, that if you can do something more, you can make the world a better place.
Love it. Well, David, this has been great. Thank you. Great time together always, and we will do it again. But before we wrap up, I have to ask you if you're willing to subject yourself to our rapid fire questions. You did these last time.
I'm scared, but very willing.
Well, we chose different questions for you, so.
I don't even know if I remember.
Well, David has no idea what we're about to ask him in our 7 rapid fire questions. So let's go for it. You want to ask the first one, Ethan?
Yeah, I can do that. All right. Question 1. Who has been a favorite teacher of yours over the years, and what do you remember them for?
Rodney Hill, recently retired, Texas A&M, first year, first design class, all about everything I just talked about, lateral thinking, finding different ways to attack a problem, being creative always in whatever it is that you do. Exercises every single week. I hope I can fit all of this in, but I remember, for instance, one time he had us design, a friend of his invented an energy drink, and it was delicious, hot and cold, and we should come up with this inventive way to enjoy this beverage. And then he took it to bring to his friend. And then a month later in class, he said, this kind of gives it away, but it's everybody, you're tired. Let's just have some fun. Everybody design a coffee mug. And everybody's coffee mug looked like a freaking coffee mug. And then he had us put it on the wall. And then he had us put this other thing that we does. He says, what's the difference between coffee and an energy drink that is enjoyed hot and cold and is savory? And broke down what coffee was. And I think of him and that every day. And I am so grateful I met him and that I'm still friends with him. Long live Rodney Hill.
That's a cool story. Yeah.
Question number 2. What is your favorite sushi roll?
My girlfriend that I was talking about has a master's degree from Stanford in Asian studies and has spent a lot of time in Japan. And she and I make hand rolls it's so much fun to make them and eat them and hear the stories that she has. And so I've had a lot of wonderful sushi, and I love it when she comes in, she'll just sneak in a little Japanese and throw them off. And there's a secret. She taught me that has shared with me, taught me that it's the simple things that show a great sushi restaurant. So we'll go to a place that's supposedly very highly rated, and she will ask in Japanese for an egg omelet, little square egg, and pickled gourd. And if they do that right, first of all, they then, and they really go out of their way to be perfect. But the simple answer is the sitting around our table with kind of combinations of omelet and tuna yellowtail and just making it, and lots of different kinds of pickles. Oh,
For you, it's the experience, and that's what you live to give to people too.
Sounds awesome. All right. Question 3. What's a funny childhood memory that you would like to share?
Boy, you stumped me on that one. A funny childhood memory that I would like to share. I can't think of anything. Wow. Let's either come back to that or we'll have to come up with another one. It's lightning round, but I'm blocked. I don't have a funny childhood memory.
Maybe it's serendipitous, and that when you do think of that, we'll bring you on for another episode. How's that?
Yeah, okay. Yes. You'll have to, I'm having a block.
Next question. If you could invite any 3 people to be your guest at dinner, who would those 3 people do just for a fun dinner?
Alive or dead, or
could be a mixture.
Wow, that's just another one. I mean, I want Einstein to be there.
There you go.
It's so funny because I'm thinking there's all these architects. You know what? Ray and Charles Eames. I know that counts as 2, but I'm going to only count them as 1. I just think that would be such a fun conversation. I have a feeling they like food as much as I do. And this is to dinner. So this one is kind of a little bit of a cheat, but there's so many things I want to talk to Frank Sinatra about again. I would love to have dinner with him right now and catch up on what has happened since. That would be a conversation that would go on for a day. I would love that. Oh my God.
He'd be making peppers and Hoboken sausage for you, though.
Yes, well, fine. I wouldn't care. I love eating, but sometimes the food is secondary. But thank you for remembering.
Alrighty, next one. What's a weird fact that you happen to know that most people wouldn't know?
You've got some tough ones. This just came up. And now I can't even remember what it is. You know, I don't know what it's like for you, but as you get older, the memory just starts to, okay. So there was just an earthquake in New Jersey and really close to Manhattan. And my girlfriend is doing something for Toyota in New York. And she said there was an earthquake and everybody was yelling and screaming and she didn't feel it. And I said, that's because your room is near the bottom of the hotel. The top of it's like a fishing pole. The top of the building is doing this, but down here it's not doing so much.
Right.
And so she said, that, all of these dumb little things that are, she didn't say dumb, I'm saying dumb, but all these things that, no, it's like, well, yeah, but that was part of structural studies. So thank you for that, sweetheart. Otherwise I would have been stumped. Okay. I can do better. I'm going to be funnier. Let's go.
Would you rather be a whale or a lion?
Ooh. You know what? I think I'd like to be, I was just thinking about this. I'm going back to the food thing, because if you're a whale, there's always plankton to eat. If you're a lion, you could be weeks before you see a gazelle. Yeah. So, I also think it'd be floating would be cool. Those noises they make are kind of nice. I mean, it's so funny. I mean, my first thought was, I want to be a lion, king of the jungle. But you know what? I'd rather be a whale.
I totally get it, yeah.
You can rise up under someone's boat and give them a big surprise.
When I was in graduate school, my last year, when we were doing thesis studies, I didn't have anything to do but thesis. And it was so grueling. So I took a scuba diving class. So I'd have one moment during the week where I wasn't, where I was in fear of my life. And I would completely get my mind off of my project. And it was a very smart move to make. And we did 3 dives. And in one, there was a whale. And my friends and I were like, let's go swim towards it. And we're starting to swim. And it gets, as you realize how huge they are as you get closer, and that tail starts moving, and you're thinking, he doesn't have to do anything but brush up against you, and he would probably knock all your equipment off. So we all kind of got scared at the same time and like, okay, that's close enough.
Good answer.
Alrighty. Last question. Did you make a New Year's resolution this year? And if so, and you're comfortable talking about it, how is it going for you?
I'm one of those people that believes that every day is the first day of the rest of your life. So I never make a New Year's resolution, but I always make resolutions on random days. And my most recent resolution was to just let things play out. That I'm a very, let me fix it, let me take care of it, let me help you, let me do it kind of person. And I have found out that I get in my own way and other people's way that I'm trying to help more often than being helpful. You know what? No, that's wrong. I am helpful more often, but there are times that it doesn't work. And in those times, it really would be best for me to let things play out.
I think that's really good advice, though. And I often find that too. Just get out of the way. I have to remind myself of that. Yep.
Yeah, I want to go back to your childhood memory. All I can really think about, because we were talking before about what made you become an architect, and when instead of just letting myself relax and think about some fun childhood memory, I'm remembering making, in Galveston, making a fort out of driftwood that was kind of more sculptural than it was structural, because there weren't enough pieces. But I remember a lot of the parents were like, maybe you should just build my house for you. So maybe I unblocked myself on that one and recalibrated my brain to come up with something. But I save that one. Oh no, don't save it because I'll forget it. But I will just say this. My childhood was very much spent looking forward to being an adult. I kept on thinking about all the ways that as an adult I would have my own house and my own, control of my own life. And a lot of my childhood was spent in, doing well in school and doing things so that I could get on with, my life. I wanted to be able to redecorate a school library on my own, not because I was sneaking my way into it.
Great stories, David. Thank you. You're a joy to talk with. So if folks want to get in touch with you or something, what's their best way to do that?
Well, I have a website, davidapplebaum.com, pretty much just my name. You can email me, david@davidapplebaum.com. It's got pretty much all of the information. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as David Applebaum Architect, and I'm on Instagram, but My Instagram is David Applebaum _architect. And there's a chat waiting for me. So can't wait to see what that is.
Cool. Well, we will get those things in the show notes as well. So I think you were an overachiever, David. I think we all worked in our challenge words. Am I correct on that?
Well, I know I did.
Yeah, I got
I
mine.
had serendipitous, and you did it several times as well. Thank you.
I was able to get calibrate in a couple of times, and I even used my own once or twice.
Yep. You used block.
I had block, and I got it in once, but not as many times as David. So
Yes, but yours was very smooth.
thank you.
Actually, I'm discovering the simpler words are a little harder to work in.
They are. Partially because you kind of forget that they exist since they're so simple.
Yeah.
Like the big words like, how am I going to use serendipitous? How am I going to use calibrate? Calibrate was a tough one, though. Serendipitous was easy because if you're lucky, serendipity comes into your life a lot.
Good point. Love it. David, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We will do it again.
Thanks for letting me. That last thing that I said made me really happy to be alive. So
cool.
Thanks for allowing me to have that.
Good stuff. And thank you to our audience for tuning into this very special episode of Construction Disruption with David Applebaum, Architect to the Stars. Please watch for future episodes of our podcast. We always have great guests. Don't forget to leave a review for us, please, on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Till the next time we're together, keep on disrupting, keep on challenging, looking for better ways of doing things. Don't forget to have a positive impact on everyone you encounter. So God bless and take care, and I will see you on the next episode of Construction Disruption.
This podcast is produced by Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building products.